We all know the big loud headlines about climate change, melting glaciers, monster storms, and rising seas. They're impossible to ignore. But what if the most widespread threats are the ones you can't easily see? What if a hidden crisis is quietly dismantling our world from the ground up? Right now, climate change is causing our roads to buckle, our fresh water to turn salty, and creating invisible threats that are fundamentally changing how we live. These aren't problems for some far-off future, they're happening as we speak, piling up just beneath the surface of our busy lives. In this video, we're counting down the top 10 silent impacts of climate change you need to know about, starting with one that might be happening right under your feet. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a problem that sounds like it belongs in the distant Arctic, but it has consequences for all of us. Thawing permafrost. Permafrost is any ground that has been completely frozen for at least 2 years straight. It's a massive feature, covering about 24% of the land in the northern hemisphere. And for centuries it's been a solid, reliable foundation. But as the planet warms, this permanent frost is starting to melt. When the ice holding the soil together turns to water, the ground loses its strength. It sinks, it shifts, and it slides. This leads to what scientists sometimes call drunken forests, where trees tilt at bizarre angles as the earth gives way beneath them. But it's not just trees. The very foundations of our modern world are built on this once solid ground. We're talking about roads that warp and buckle, airport runways that crack, and pipelines at risk of breaking. In some towns in Alaska and Russia, up to 80% of buildings have already reported damage from this slow-motion collapse. Entire communities, built on the promise of frozen earth, are now facing a future where the ground beneath them is no longer dependable, threatening their homes, safety, and critical supply lines. At number 9, we see how climate change is making the ground itself more treacherous in another way, through landslides and erosion. The problem comes from a dramatic shift in how we get our rain and snow. It's not just that some places are getting more or less rain, it's that the way it rains is changing. We're seeing more intense concentrated downpours packed between longer dry spells. This is a dangerous combination. When heavy rain hammers down on soil that's been dried out and hardened by drought, the ground can't absorb the water fast enough. Instead, the water scours the land, washing away topsoil and weakening hillsides. Add in rapid snowmelt in the mountains, and you've got a perfect recipe for disaster. The soil becomes waterlogged and unstable, leading to a much higher risk of catastrophic landslides. These aren't just happening in some remote wilderness. They bury highways, derail trains, and wipe out bridges, cutting off communities and blocking crucial transport and emergency routes. This silent threat is a powerful reminder that the stability we often take for granted is being washed away, one downpour at a time. Coming in at number 8 is one of the sneakiest and most difficult to reverse impacts. Saltwater is quietly seeping into our freshwater. This process, known as saltwater intrusion, is a direct result of rising sea levels. As oceans push higher, the denser saltwater shoves its way inland, invading rivers and the underground aquifers that millions of people depend on for drinking water. This isn't a hypothetical. Along the U.S. coasts, from Florida to California, communities are watching their freshwater wells become unusable. The town of Hilton Head, South Carolina, has already lost 10 of its 14 freshwater wells to salt contamination since 2000. In Louisiana, the powerful Mississippi River has seen salt from the Gulf of Mexico creep so far upstream that it has threatened the drinking water for New Orleans, forcing officials to scramble for emergency solutions. This creeping contamination doesn't just affect our taps, it poisons farmland, making it useless for growing crops, and it corrodes the very pipes and infrastructure built to carry our water. We are facing a future where the line between fresh and salt water is literally blurring, putting our most essential resource at risk. At number 7, we shift from the ground and water to a biological threat. Climate change is redrawing the map for disease-carrying insects like mosquitoes and ticks. For thousands of years, the ranges of these pests were limited by temperature. Cold winters would kill them off, creating natural geographic barriers against the diseases they carry, like Lyme disease, West Nile virus, and dengue fever. But as the planet warms, those barriers are dissolving. Milder winters and shifting rainfall patterns are allowing these insects to survive and thrive in regions that were once too cold or dry. This means they are expanding their territories, moving north and into higher elevations, and bringing diseases with them to new, unprepared populations. This isn't just a risk to humans. These expanding pest populations also threaten livestock and wildlife, creating a ripple effect that can harm our food supply and the stability of entire ecosystems. Climate change is quietly opening the door for invisible invaders, and it's changing the landscape of public health. Number 6 on our list touches on a vulnerability that has become all too obvious in recent years: our fragile global supply chains. While the pandemic exposed just how weak the system can be, climate change poses a much more permanent and escalating threat. Every single link in the chain that brings food to our stores and goods to our homes is vulnerable. Extreme weather, which is becoming more frequent and intense, is the main problem. A single hurricane can shut down a major port for weeks. Floods can wash out railway lines and highways, severing critical transportation arteries. Droughts can lower water levels in vital shipping channels like the Rhine or the Panama Canal, forcing cargo ships to carry lighter loads or stop moving altogether. One study in the journal Nature warns that these indirect disruptions could lead to trillions of dollars in economic losses by the middle of the century, with manufacturing-heavy economies getting hit the hardest. This means a heat wave or a flood happening thousands of miles away can directly lead to empty shelves and higher prices in your local supermarket. Climate change is turning the predictable rhythm of global trade into a chaotic game of chance. Coming in at number 5 is a threat that hits the heart of modern life: the weakening of our power grid. The infrastructure that powers our homes, hospitals, and economies is being strained to a breaking point by climate change, especially extreme heat. During a heat wave, a dangerous feedback loop kicks in. Demand for electricity skyrockets as everyone cranks up the air conditioning, but at the exact same time, the grid's ability to supply that power drops. Power plants, whether they're nuclear or fossil fuel, often rely on water for cooling, and they become less efficient when that water gets too warm. Even the transmission lines that carry electricity across the country lose more energy as they heat up. Think of it like a pipe that gets leakier under pressure. According to reports, heat-related power outages in the US have surged dramatically in the last decade. Grid operators are now issuing regular warnings that huge parts of the country don't have enough power in reserve to handle hotter than normal summer conditions. This silent strain on our grid means a higher risk of brownouts and blackouts, right when we need power the most. At number 4, we have an impact every driver and commuter can understand. Our roads and railways are literally being cooked and cracked by climate change. The materials we use to build our transportation networks were designed for a climate that doesn't really exist anymore. Hotter summer temperatures cause asphalt to soften and deform, leading to ruts and potholes, but the damage doesn't stop there. More unpredictable weather patterns are creating devastating freeze-thaw cycles. Water seeps into tiny cracks in the pavement, freezes and expands overnight, and then thaws, leaving behind a bigger cavity. This process rapidly destroys roads, bridges, and rail beds. Add in the increased flooding and soil erosion we talked about earlier, which can wash out the very ground supporting a road or railway, and you have a recipe for constant, expensive repairs and a higher risk of accidents. The silent crumbling of our transportation network is a hidden tax imposed by climate change, paid for with endless maintenance bills and our own safety. Number 3 brings us back to the water in our taps, but this time, it's about what's in it. Climate change is seriously degrading the quality of our water sources, making it harder and more expensive to make it safe to drink. More intense rainfall events are overwhelming our aging stormwater and sewage systems. This leads to overflows that dump untreated sewage, chemicals, and other pollutants directly into the rivers and lakes that supply our drinking water. At the same time, warmer water temperatures create the perfect breeding ground for harmful algal blooms. These blooms can release toxins that are dangerous to both people and animals. They can also clog the intake pipes of water treatment plants, forcing expensive shutdowns and upgrades. Water utilities are facing a serious challenge. Their source water is getting dirtier, and they need more advanced, energy-hungry, and expensive technology just to clean it. This quiet decline in water quality is a hidden cost that eventually shows up in our utility bills and our health. As we near the top of our list, number 2 is an impact that is stripping away our planet's own natural armor. For centuries, coastal communities have been protected by a living shield of wetlands, mangrove forests, and coral reefs. These ecosystems are nature's frontline defense against the ocean's power. They absorb the energy from waves, reduce storm surge, and prevent the coast from eroding, protecting the homes and infrastructure behind them. But these natural barriers are dying. Rising sea levels are drowning wetlands. Ocean acidification caused by the ocean absorbing excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is bleaching and killing coral reefs. And stronger, more frequent storms are physically tearing these fragile ecosystems apart. As these natural defenses disappear, coastal communities become drastically more vulnerable to flooding and storm damage. We're losing the priceless free service that nature has always provided, forcing us to build hugely expensive and often less effective artificial barriers, like seawalls, in their place. The silence of these dying ecosystems is a dire warning of the storms that are coming. And the number one silent impact of climate change is the fundamental reorganization of what we can grow and where we can grow it. This is the massive shift of our planet's agricultural zones. For centuries, farmers have relied on predictable climate patterns, but those patterns are now broken. The USDA's Plant Hardiness Zone Map, a tool gardeners and farmers use to know which plants will survive where, has been steadily changing. The most recent map, updated in 2023, shows that about half of the US has shifted into a warmer half zone. The new map is, on average, about 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the one from 2012, reflecting our new climate reality. While this might sound like a good thing for some gardeners, it's creating chaos for our food systems. Traditional crops may no longer grow well where they once did, and the pests that attack them are also on the move. This forces a massive and expensive overhaul of infrastructure, requiring new irrigation, new storage facilities, and new transportation routes to support a completely redrawn agricultural map. This isn't just a problem for farmers, it's a direct threat to global food security and the price of food on all of our plates. These 10 impacts are just the start. They are the quiet cascading failures happening behind the scenes, and understanding them is the first step. If you found this information valuable, and want to see more deep dives into the science that's shaping our world, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Sharing this video also helps get this critical information out to more people. What other hidden climate impacts have you noticed or read about? Let us know in the comments below. From the unstable ground in the Arctic to the salt in our water and the food on our plates, the silent impacts of climate change are already here. They aren't as loud as a hurricane, but in many ways they cut deeper. They reveal just how interconnected our society is, and how a failure in one system can set off a chain reaction of problems in others. This isn't a story about a distant apocalyptic future. It's a story about the here and now. It's about the gradual, systemic unraveling of the stable world we once knew. The challenges are enormous, but looking away isn't an option. By understanding these hidden threats, we can start having the right conversations, making smarter plans, and working to build a more resilient future on a planet that is changing right before our eyes.